to those who joined. We started early as we promised.
Not
So
early, on
on time,
time.
on time, on time. Yes, yes. Okay, so you can go ahead now.
Okay, I was jumping the gun. Okay, so again, just to remind you, we do have a Facebook page and a YouTube page with the same name, DRD Natural Health. And our email address is drdnaturalhealth@gmail.com. We also want to remind you.
And just to add, our
Oh,
website is
yes.
up.
Our website is up. It is drdnaturalhealth.com. So you can go check that out after the session. We just want to remind you that this is being recorded. And I'll just give our little disclaimer here. So the information that we're sharing is for educational purposes only and is not intended to diagnose, prescribe, treat, cure, or replace any recommendations from your healthcare provider. Okay.
Okay, good. You covered them all.
Yes.
All
All
right.
right. What are
So,
we talking about today?
so today we are talking about a condition that is plaguing a lot of people. And we hinted to it sometime in one of our previous talks,
Mm-hmm.
and that is hypertension.
Tension. Mm-hmm.
Now, earlier I was talking to my other daughter, and she said, "What are you talking about today?" And she said, "What are you gonna call it?" And I just said, "Pressure, pressure, pressure."
Oh
So,
my.
hypertension. And if you remember when we spoke about diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
I hinted to hypertension in that discussion
Mm-hmm.
because the two women that we spoke about at that time, they also had hypertension.
Yeah.
And usually, when there are two or more conditions,
Mm-hmm.
then it's considered comorbidity,
Yeah.
right? So both women have had diabetes and hypertension.
So who are these women? Just
Yeah.
to refresh their
Okay.
memories.
So the first one is my grandmother,
Mm-hmm.
which I called Mama, and that would be your great grandmother.
Yeah.
And the second one was my mother in law, and I called her Mom. So we
Mm-hmm.
all called her Mom.
Yeah.
And this evening, I want to introduce a third
Mm-hmm.
woman that is also a part of our lives, and or at least was,
Mm-hmm.
and that is my mother.
Yeah.
And my mother also had hypertension.
Mm-hmm.
Well, sadly, I my mother died at a very early age. And,
Mm-hmm.
for her and for me, when
Yeah.
she died, I was 10 years old,
Mm.
and that was really, really sad for us as children.
Yeah.
But the all three of these women had hypertension,
Mm-hmm.
and their life stories are different, but I will just summarize their life stories in just a few sentences.
Yeah.
As mentioned, well, a little bit about my I'm talking the audience know a little bit about my mother-in-law and my grandmother. But my mother, she was pretty young, and she was pregnant with my sister.
Mm-hmm.
And after the baby was delivered, her blood pressure went up during the pregnancy. And I'm just realizing this in my later years because they didn't tell me what happened to her then. But after
Mm-hmm.
the baby was delivered, her blood pressure went up and she went into a coma, and she never came back from the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
She died. So
Mm-hmm.
that was one case. Then my mother-in-law, she was diabetic as well as hypertensive,
Yeah.
and she went into a diabetic coma.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because that particular day she was very upset, and her
Mm-hmm.
blood pressure went up, her blood sugar went up.
Yeah.
That's what stress does.
Mm-hmm.
And then my grandmother, she had two strokes,
Yeah.
and therefore she even walked with a limp, and this was again due to her hypertension.
Mm-hmm.
So we want persons to realize that these conditions are lifestyle conditions.
Yeah.
They are conditions that people live with every day, and for some people, it's easy for them to just pop a pill.
Yeah.
But if we change our lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
then we can overcome these
Yes.
conditions. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's get into hypertension. And before we start, we want to talk a little bit about, how is it measured, right? Because hypertension is the way it's defined based on the measurement. So when we talk about hypertension, there are two different numbers. So when you do your blood pressure, they look for two numbers. So your systolic blood pressure, right? So that number is the pressure against your arteries when the blood is coming out of your heart. And then there's the diastolic number. That's the pressure of the blood when it's flowing back to the heart. So in between the pumps of the heart. So systolic blood pressure and diastolic blood pressure. So now hypertension is when your systolic blood pressure is greater than 130, right? And your diastolic blood pressure is greater than 80, right? So we don't want our blood pressure to be above those two numbers, right? So ideally, the number that they use is 120 over 80. But ideally, we want it, just a little below those numbers, just to, account for any fluctuations that might happen in the blood pressure. So, what are some facts about hypertension? Right? So hypertensive patients are 3 times more likely to have a heart attack. They're 5 times more likely to develop heart failure and 8 times more likely to suffer from a stroke. So we can already see how devastating, high blood pressure can be, right? Because it can cause so many other conditions. And when we think about, high blood pressure and the force of the blood against our arteries, we really have to think about certain key organs, right? So some of those organs would be your brain, right? Our brain, another major organ would be the heart, right? Another part of the body we need to consider are our eyes, right? So if you go to see the doctor and you're like, doctor, I want to check my blood pressure, a lot of times they will do an eye exam, because when you look in the eye, you can actually see, the arteries and the veins, and they can tell you how progressive this blood pressure condition is, right? Another organ we want to look at are the kidneys, right? To see how are they filtering the blood, because our kidneys have really small blood vessels, and if there's too much pressure there, it can lead to kidney failure, right?
And persons who are on hypertensive medication, usually
Mm.
the doctors will, after a year or so, have them check their kidneys just to
Mm-hmm.
make sure everything is
Yes,
working
always
okay.
have to check the kidneys.
Mm-hmm.
And we also want to just look at the arteries in the periphery, like in your limbs, upper limbs, lower limbs. So those are just some, interesting facts about hypertension. And I mentioned before, we want our blood pressure to be less than 120 over 80. Now, a lot of people have, machines at home that they can use to measure their blood pressure. And that's something that you can do, especially if, that's a condition that runs in your family,
Mm-hmm.
or if you've already been diagnosed with a condition related to high blood pressure. It's good to have that machine at home. It records the readings. You can give them to your doctor, and you can work with those numbers in order to get them below 120 over 80.
Yeah, and on the point of the numbers, I noticed that some places or you'll realize that the number is higher. Their numbers are higher than 120/80. I'm not sure why. Like in the
You mean the
US, the
range?
range, they will
Okay.
say if it's 135, then it's fine. You know, so the doctors won't necessarily encourage the person to, you know, try and get it below
Yeah.
135 because for them that's okay. But 120/80 is really a good reading that you would want to have.
Yeah. So let's talk about, different types of hypertension. So there are two main types. There's primary hypertension. That means it's not caused by anything else. Or there's secondary hypertension that can be caused by other diseases. So like chronic kidney disease, or there might be a tumor, or there might be another comorbidity like my mom mentioned, like diabetes, right? So these two different types of hypertension are important for us to think about, to see, okay, is there an underlying cause of why you have this hypertension?
Because if the cause is, say for example, from the kidney disease, then you definitely need to fix the kidney disease before you can do anything else about the hypertension itself. Yeah. So some of the causes of hypertension, when you think about them, it's one of them we had mentioned before, stress. And that is, you know, we all have stress, and you know, they're a part of our lives, our everyday lives. You know, we're stressed with just about everything, but sometimes it's how we handle it. How do we deal with those stressors when they come?
Yes.
And that is a big part of hypertension. Now, when persons are not sleeping properly, when we're not getting enough sleep, that too will cause our blood pressure to be high. Exercise, if we're not exercising, then, you know, the again, we need to have the blood moving freely and less pressure on the heart. Improper inhalation. So if we sit and we're slumping all the time, then there is not enough room for our lungs to expand, and then we need the air going through the veins as well to help to make the blood go freer. And when we worry about those things that we cannot change. And not only that, but I remember once my manager said to me, why worry about something today that is supposed to happen tomorrow, when tomorrow it might not happen at all?
Yeah, that's true.
So tomorrow it might never happen, or if it happens tomorrow, then I would have been stressing from today.
Yeah.
So wait until tomorrow, and then if you need to, then you stress tomorrow or you worry tomorrow, as opposed to worrying from the day before.
Yeah.
All
there
right.
there are a couple sayings. I remember one of them says, worry is like a rocking chair. It keeps you busy but gets you nowhere. Right? And so a lot of times we feel like, worrying is us doing something. You want to do something to see if you can, change the situation, but worrying, it's just all in your head. It's just the brain work, right? And it doesn't accomplish anything. There's another quote that says, worry is blind and cannot discern the future, but God knows the end from the beginning. Right? So there's no need for us to worry about things. And this is a reminder for me too, because sometimes I get some news, something about school, and it's like headache. It's like, we really need to be mindful of our thoughts, and like you mentioned before, how we react to situations, because the stress will always be there.
Always be there. Always. There are so many different things that can cause stress. And you know, it's just how we handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And if we really believe that our lives are in the hands of the Lord and he's the one that's taking us through,
Yeah.
then he clearly tells us that he will not allow anything to
Mm-hmm.
come to us that he has not already weighed, and he
Yes.
knows that we can manage
Mm-hmm.
that thing, whatever it is.
Yes.
But somebody would then say, but we're humans, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
natural thing to do. But if it is for you the natural thing to do, just don't worry about it too long. Call a friend and say, pray with me, or
Mm-hmm.
just remember that God is there to help
Yeah.
us. Yeah.
And along the same lines of stress, we have to mention something called HPA axis dysfunction. So there are parts in your brain called the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland, and they send signals to your adrenal glands, which are on top of your kidneys. And your adrenal glands release these stress hormones, right? And so when there's a dysfunction, when there's an imbalance, right, that can affect our arteries, our blood flow, and cause inflammation in those arteries, and can also lead to high blood pressure. So that's another reason why we need to
Yes.
manage our stress
Stress.
levels.
Yes.
Another one that we mentioned earlier was kidney disease, right? So if our kidneys are not filtering things appropriately, right, then we know our kidneys actually are important for filtering our sodium and potassium and ensuring that there's a balance between those two, right? And if our kidneys aren't working, then there's an imbalance, and that imbalance can also lead to high blood pressure. Another one.
Cortisol.
Mm-hmm.
That one is good and bad,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think it was last week that you mentioned that we do need cortisol. It a little bit of it is not too bad, but when
Mm-hmm.
you're stressed for a long time,
Yeah.
then you have too much cortisol, and then we have problems, right? So too much cortisol can cause inflammation in the arteries,
Mm-hmm.
which again will affect our blood pressure.
Yeah, so a lot of times we look at cortisol as the bad guy, but cortisol is made from our adrenal glands, like I just mentioned. So normally what happens is when you're under intense stress, and the example that's always used is if you're outside and there's a bear and the bear is running at you, you need this cortisol to like get your heart pumping, get your feet running, and so that you can escape
Move.
that. Yeah, you can escape. But when we have chronic long-term stress, the cortisol is around much longer than it needs to be. And the body wasn't built to have that much cortisol around for such a long period of time. So that's how you get that imbalance too.
Okay.
Yeah. So we mentioned diabetes, right? So if we have diabetes along with hypertension, those two are not good. And we know that with diabetes, you already have damage to your blood vessels. So imagine damaged blood vessels, plus blood vessels that are clogged and that have to deal with a lot of pressure. That's a lot of work for the heart to do, right? So those two don't go well together.
And there's a third one that goes with high blood pressure, diabetes, and high cholesterol.
Yes.
And
Yes.
again, another lifestyle disease. Yeah.
That's actually called metabolic syndrome. So with metabolic syndrome, like my mom mentioned, you have dyslipidemia. So that means your triglycerides are high, your LDL is too high, and your HDL is too low, right? Then you have insulin resistance. So that's related to the diabetes, right? Then you have obesity, and then you have the high blood pressure. So those things compounded together are not good for our health. So we really want to ensure that, we're doing everything we can, lifestyle wise, to ensure that we don't get these diseases.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So another one, high salt intake. Now, I was listening to someone the other day, and the person said there's this lady who was not using salt in her food at all.
Yeah.
And this was for years.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, is she still diabetic? I mean, hypertensive? And the answer was yes.
Yeah.
So obviously, if you have not used
Mm-hmm.
salt for years, salt is not the problem,
Mm-hmm.
right? However, we just want to point out that our bodies need salt.
Yes.
Or tear ducts is, if you've ever tasted your tear, it is salty.
Mm-hmm.
The perspiration is salty.
Mm-hmm.
The mucus that comes from our nostril, it's
Mm-hmm.
salty. So
Mm-hmm.
we need salt, because if you're always losing and you're not replacing,
Yeah.
then that means you're losing some minerals that are needed by the body.
Mm-hmm.
So we recommend that persons use good salt
Yeah.
in moderation.
Mm-hmm.
And there are two good salts.
Yeah.
The doctor will say, don't use salt. And what he's referring to is the table salt,
Yeah.
because usually the table salt has only iodine and sodium.
Mm-hmm. And just and
Chloride.
chloride.
The
Mm-hmm.
iodine is added to it, right?
Yes. Yes.
And the the reference is made of soldiers who were in the war, and when they needed saline,
Mm-hmm.
they would use the salt water, the water from
From
the
the sea.
sea,
Yeah.
right? That water is similar to our blood.
Mm-hmm.
And so the salt from the ocean is usually, it carries over 84 different elements in it. And the table salt, those elements are removed, leaving
Mm-hmm.
only two or
Yeah.
three.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why we get the spike in the blood pressure
Mm-hmm.
when we use the salt, because it is, the balance is removed.
Yeah.
Right. So when God makes something, he makes it's balanced.
Mm-hmm.
Right. The 84 different elements are good for us. And
Yeah.
when we have those as they are made, then we don't have to worry, of course, again, in moderation,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think we had mentioned it sometime before, but the pink Himalayan salt
Mm-hmm.
and the Celtic sea salt, those are very
Yeah.
good salts that you can use instead of the
The
white
table salt.
table salt.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And like you mentioned, those would have the good balance of sodium and potassium, because a low potassium diet can also lead to hypertension.
Tension. Yes.
So if you just get a good salt that is well balanced, then you won't have to worry about, am I having too much sodium? Do I have enough potassium?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So something we mentioned earlier, being overweight, right? We know that increases your chances of having high blood pressure. Also, if you have clogged arteries, and that leads us to our diet. Are you exercising? Are you
Mm-hmm.
moving? And we mentioned lack of exercise. There's also low estrogen.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of women, when you become perimenopausal or menopausal, your estrogen levels drop. And estrogen is very important for your cardiovascular health. And so we really need to ensure that we are getting, enough estrogen. So I know some people, they might do hormone replacement therapy, but you can also use foods, right? There are phytoestrogens, so like our soy.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to have soy, we want you to have organic soy, non-GMO. And you can also have flax seeds.
Mm-hmm.
So those are, just two foods that have that are phytoestrogens that can help your body have these estrogens, so that it reduces your risk of these cardiovascular issues in menopause.
And there is the edamame, which
Mm-hmm.
is also
Edamame, yeah.
the soy as well.
Mm-hmm. Red clover.
Red clover,
Yeah.
yes, and that grows wild
Mm-hmm.
everywhere. So you can have your red clover
Mm-hmm.
tea,
Yeah.
that you can drink for
Mm-hmm.
your estrogen as well.
Yeah.
Just remember that soy, if you can have more soybeans like the edamame,
Mm-hmm.
than like you're having a block
Like
of tofu,
yeah.
because that is really dense and
Concentrated.
concentrated.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes. So for persons who are smoking,
Mm-hmm.
that is also something that will cause your blood pressure
Yeah.
to go up. So I pray that we don't have anyone on, or even that will listen in the future, that is a smoker, because that really causes the blood vessels to get narrow and to also become hard.
Yeah.
Therefore, it's difficult for the blood to pass through the vessels. And the same thing with alcohol.
Yeah.
You know, the alcohol will also raise the blood pressure. So if you're drinking alcohol in any form, then that is also going to cause your blood pressure to go up.
Yeah. There's also caffeine. We know caffeine is a stimulant that also increases our blood pressure. And vitamin D. You know, vitamin D is so important for so many diseases. And of course, it's also important in high blood pressure, right? Because imagine, you know, just going outside in the sun, it's so relaxing, so calming. And of course, that's going to regulate your blood pressure to a normal range. So we really want to ensure, if you're in a country where you're not getting any vitamin D right now, you should consider, you know, supplementing with vitamin D.
D3.
Vitamin D3, yes. There are also some medications that can cause high blood pressure. We don't have a full list here, but some of them are acetaminophen, that's Tylenol. Some steroid drugs can increase your blood pressure, antidepressants, and NSAIDs. So that's like your ibuprofen or Advil. And these are things that people take on a regular basis.
And birth control pills as well.
Birth control pills too.
That can also do that to you.
Yeah, so we really want to ensure, you know, if these are things you're taking on a regular basis, why? You know, try and find out, you know, what can I do, you know, to reduce the need for this medication. For this medication.
The first thing, as we had said in a previous session, is to ascertain the cause. We should not be comfortable. I mean, we're not comfortable with pain. So we should not be comfortable with any form of disease, any sickness at all. Try to get to the root cause. And once we get to the root cause, then we can work our way up to see what is the best thing that we can do so that we can get rid of this condition.
And, you know, an interesting cause of high blood pressure is constipation, right? And so constipation can induce high blood pressure. And we know, you know, constipation can increase with age. And a part of that is, you know, sometimes as people get older, they're not eating a lot. They're not as active. They're not eating a lot of food with fiber. Sometimes, you know, they may have issues chewing the food, or they may lose their teeth. You know, and sometimes even straining on the toilet can increase the blood pressure. So we really want to address that as well.
Yeah. So how would someone know if they're constipated?
Yeah, so you should be going to the bathroom at least once a day, right? At least. So if you're not going to the bathroom once a day, then you are constipated. If you are straining, then you are constipated. And, you know, it might seem, you know, it's just stool, but you can learn a lot from your stool. You know, you want to know the color. You know, is it a good color? Do I see food in my stool? Is there mucus? Is there blood? You know, so whenever you go to the bathroom, always look behind you, because you can learn so much just from looking at your stool. Yeah.
Okay.
And then you mentioned, what else can we do for constipation? Remember, we mentioned water, exercise, fiber, and laughter. Don't forget it.
Yes, laughter.
That's the best one. Laughter.
That's a good one.
Okay.
Yes. Okay.
So what are some symptoms now of hypertension?
Well, I'm sure if we were to ask, most people might say, you know, it's the silent killer, because there are no symptoms. But really, there are some signs. And if we know our bodies, then we will know that things are changing. You know, so your heart beat is abnormal. Normally you would have your, how does it sound? Putum.
It's lub dub.
Oh, love
Dub dub.
dub. Yeah,
Dub
that's the
dub.
word I was
Dub
looking
dub.
for. Yeah, so you have that, and then um now it's not like that anymore. There are
Mm-hmm.
changes.
Yeah.
um you wake up one morning, or you're just in the house doing your thing, and there's a sense of confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Something is wrong. There might be a terrible headache,
Yeah.
and palpitation, or irregularity again with your
Mm-hmm.
heartbeat. Or
Mm-hmm.
for some people, they will get a nosebleed,
Yeah.
and that is one sign telling them that there is something that's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There is swelling because there's poor circulation to the feet or
Yeah.
to the fingers,
Mm-hmm.
and the hands. There's swelling in the hands as well.
Yeah.
So those are some signs that
Mm-hmm.
persons can use. They might feel dizzy, or even ringing in the ear,
Mm-hmm.
and blurred vision.
Yeah.
So many different things can tell you that something is
Wrong.
wrong.
Yeah.
So it's best to check it out. If things have changed with you, then go see your doctor. Or if you have the cough, as Donisha mentioned, then try. Oh, my cough is somewhere here. Yeah. As I've mentioned, my mother, my grandmother, and my mother-in-law. Well, my mother-in-law
Mm.
wouldn't really affect me,
Yeah.
but my mother and my grandmother
Mm-hmm.
are hypertensive. My maternal grandmother was also hypertensive.
Yeah.
My aunts are hypertensive. So what do? I have my machine,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had a machine for years.
Yeah.
And every now and again, I would take my blood pressure
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that it's okay, that it's
Yeah.
normal. And if I take it and it's not normal, then I will go to my cupboard, and I'll make myself a nice cup of tea
Mm-hmm.
with some of the herbs that we'll tell you about.
Yeah.
Or um, yeah, that's usually it. The herbs,
Mm-hmm.
or because I was gonna say or garlic, but it's there as well. That I would just make some tea and ensure that I'm not stressing about anything. But it's
Mm-hmm.
good to have a
Yeah.
cough, or if you have access to like a Costco, Walmart. I know
Walmart. Yeah.
Walmart does. You can go in the store and you can get it checked, or you can have the pharmacist check it for you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good to know your numbers and know
Yeah.
that they're okay.
Yeah. Another thing too is, we're not going to touch much on it in this session, but thinking about, guilt and remorse and
Mm-hmm.
unforgiveness and
Mm-hmm.
issues in the family, those things can also lead to hypertension,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So we can't ignore those things as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's correct.
So,
Mm-hmm.
what are some things that we should avoid if we are hypertensive that we haven't mentioned already?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, um, high sodium food.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of foods like even,
Chips.
yeah, those
Yeah.
chips that are salty, and
Sauces.
the sauces, and the cured meat,
Mm-hmm.
and the cured cheese,
Yeah.
and all of those high sodium foods. We need
Mm-hmm.
to eliminate them from our diet. We need to, as best as possible, move away from animal protein.
Mm-hmm.
And the animal protein, what it does, it causes damage to the nephrons of the kidneys, which will eventually
Yeah.
then lead to hypertension, as was mentioned before, and not only hypertension, but kidney insufficiency as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, eliminate refined foods.
Yeah.
Refined foods have no fiber.
Mm-hmm.
And I might say as well at this point that meat has no fiber. Animal protein has no fiber. So think of someone who is eating um, meat,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe some white bread,
Yeah.
and something else that's processed, well, and some cheese.
Yeah.
That's a meal. Then there's no fiber in that meal
Mm-hmm.
at all. So
Mm-hmm.
you want to ensure that you don't have those hot peppers. There are a
Yeah.
lot of persons who love to have hot peppers in their meal,
Mm-hmm.
and that will definitely increase your blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So you want to eliminate all the hot peppers, the Scotch bonnet, the chili, black pepper, white pepper, um, bird pepper, all of those
Yeah.
peppers. They will stimulate the nervous system and will affect your hypertension.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Now, cayenne pepper, someone may ask, that is used for medicinal purposes,
Mm-hmm.
and you still would not cook with the cayenne pepper
Yeah.
at all, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing that I'd like to mention is bedtime.
Yes.
Have
Yes.
yourself a set bedtime
Mm-hmm.
and get enough rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what are some things that we can do now to actually help if, someone has hypertension, high blood pressure? One of the things we can use is magnesium. Magnesium is very good for any cardiovascular concerns. It's very relaxing,
Mhm.
and it's very accessible, right? So they have magnesium supplements, magnesium powders, magnesium sprays. There's so many different options. And I believe, if I remember correctly, magnesium is important for over 600 reactions in the
Wow.
body. Over 600.
Wow, I
So
didn't
that
know
just
that.
tells you how important it is for us to have
Yeah.
magnesium.
Magnesium. I do we do have the spray, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's very good for pain. When
Yes.
we're having
Yes.
pain anywhere, then we would make the it's called magnesium oil,
Yeah.
but we make it ourselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's very good just to spray,
Mm-hmm.
just to pray
Spray.
spray it on our bodies. And
Yeah.
I will give you an experience that we have had in our family.
Mm-hmm.
um Now, one night I had gone to bed and my husband was having terrible pain,
Yeah.
terrible headache. And for some reason he didn't want to wake me. I guess he usually he doesn't wake me up at
Yeah.
nights. But that particular night I woke up to go to the washroom, and I've had this magnesium oil
Mm-hmm.
here for a long time. And when I woke up, he said, I noticed that he was sitting up, and I said,
Mm-hmm.
what's wrong? And he said, I have been having this terrible headache.
Yeah.
I don't know what is causing it. I can't sleep and I don't know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I went for the magnesium oil and
Yeah.
I sprayed some on him,
Uh-huh.
and I went right back to bed. And in the morning, when I woke up and I said, so how are you feeling? He said, what is that magic thing you gave me last night?
We don't believe in magic.
No, we don't believe in magic, but I guess that was the only word that he could think of at the time,
Mm-hmm.
because he said almost immediately
Yeah.
he went off to sleep.
Wow.
And that was it for the headache. So
Mm-hmm.
after that, he is sold on magnesium oil. If the bottle is empty, he wants me to make some right away. And any pain anywhere, he goes for his magnesium oil and he sprays it. So I know it's
It
good. It
works.
works.
Yeah.
Yeah, it works.
Very relaxing.
Yeah.
So we talked about bedtime, water. I don't know if we've mentioned water yet, but water is so important. It keeps the blood flowing so the blood
Yes.
isn't thick, right? We want to
Mhm.
have perfect circulation. We talked about breathing, we talked about exercise. It's all
And
about
and we talked about sunshine too.
yes.
Yeah,
So all
sunshine.
these simple free things that
Yes.
we can do
Yeah.
to ensure that our blood pressure is within a normal range.
And another thing too is that persons can get a daily planner.
Mm-hmm.
Plan ahead.
Yeah.
Ensure that you're you're not fussing, just trying to figure out why, what is it you're supposed to do, when is this appointment, when is
Yeah.
that date,
Mm-hmm.
because the simple things like that can cause your blood pressure
Yes.
to go up. So
Yes.
proper planning will help greatly.
Mm-hmm. And Diet is also very important, right? We talked about, eliminating the meat products, right? Eliminating refined foods, fried foods. But after we've eliminated those things, we want to include, all the healthy foods, all the fruits, the vegetables, the grains, the nuts, the seeds, the legumes. All those things have a lot of fiber. They're very healthy for our arteries too, keeping them clear and allowing, proper flow of blood through them. And we also talked about potassium.
Mhm.
So the foods that are high in potassium, we have our spinach, our nuts, some of our beans. So we see that by eating a balanced, whole food, plant-based diet, we're getting all the things that we need to ensure that we, don't develop high blood pressure.
Right. And we talked about the salt.
Mm-hmm.
Now, another thing is that persons would want to eliminate the white,
Mm-hmm.
the white bread, the white sugar. Oh, I know a lot of people love the white sugar,
Yeah.
especially in their tea, but
Mm-hmm.
it has no nutrients in
Yeah.
it. Everything is taken out of it. And we also want to be careful of the fine brown sugar that looks similar to the white sugar, because
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's just the same white sugar with a little molasses over
Molasses.
it. So you want to be careful of that. It's best that you try and use natural sweeteners
Mm-hmm.
as best as possible. The cane sugar, I think there's a
Coconut
coconut
sugar,
sugar, and
maple syrup,
maple syrup.
honey.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
best that we try to use those.
And you can use your dried fruits too.
Yes,
I
like
think
your, yep,
I
your
was
dates and your
mm-hmm,
raisins.
mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. I think I was gonna say just ensure they don't have I think it's the sulfur.
Oh,
Like some of the
yes.
dried fruits have that
Yes,
on
sulfur
them.
on
Yeah.
them. Yes.
Okay. We also want to avoid alcohol, like we mentioned earlier, and anything that's too much of a stimulant, right? Including the
Hmm.
caffeine.
And the vinegar too,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the condiments have
Yeah.
been, as a matter of fact, maybe all
All
of
of
them.
them. Yeah.
So in your mayonnaise, mayonnaise, vegenaise,
Yeah. The
tomato
vinaigrettes.
ketchup, the vinaigrettes, and
Yeah.
if you remember what we said about vinegar, it's worse than alcohol because it's
Mm-hmm.
alcohol
That's fermented.
fermented,
Yeah.
right? And it rots the bones. You don't
Mm-hmm.
want to have, and I think it even punches holes in our stomach as well. So we want to avoid the alcohol. Another thing that we want to ensure that you do, as Donisha mentioned, it is the water.
Mm-hmm.
Ensure that you're drinking enough water and that your urine is at all times clear
The
yellow,
pale
pale
yellow.
yellow. You
Yeah.
want it to be pale yellow at all times.
Mm-hmm. So, we talked a little bit about reducing our stress, and each person is going to have different ways to reduce their stress, right? So, you have to find, what is that thing that works for me? I know what helps me is going outside, getting some fresh air, just stepping away from my schoolwork, right? But for someone else, it might be calling a friend, it might be writing in a journal, it might be exercising. So you really need to find out, what works for you so that you're not overstressed and pushing yourself to that limit.
And move away.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes I know it's difficult depending on what it is, but consider moving away. Pray about moving away from the stressor. And
Yeah.
I'm saying, if it's the job, pray about it,
Mm-hmm.
and get to the place where you can move away from that job and find another job,
Mm-hmm.
because at the end of the day it's not worth it.
Yeah.
It's not worth
Yeah.
it. So
But we know it's not easy to find jobs now. That's why we're not saying leave,
yeah.
right? But we're saying, pray about it, bring your problems to the Lord, right? And he will give you the strength to get through whatever you're going through
Mhm.
until, there's a way out.
And if it's the spouse, pray,
Mhm.
pray, pray, pray.
Mhm. Mhm. All right. So let's get to some herbs that we can use for hypertension?
Yay, garlic.
I feel like garlic is good for everything.
Exactly. Some garlic, but there are also garlic tablets that
Mm-hmm.
that you can take, and sometimes you'll find some garlic tablets where the smell is removed, so
Yeah,
it
the odorless.
odorless
Yeah.
garlic. Yeah, don't buy those. Those
Mm-hmm.
are the medicine is in the part that's removed.
Mm-hmm.
So get the especially now during COVID, no one is supposed to be this close to you anyways. They're supposed to be
6 feet.
okay, so you don't have to worry that you're gonna have garlic breath. But garlic is very, very good,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a tablet that's Garlinase.
Yeah.
That's Garlinase, and
Mm-hmm.
that one's very good. Um, of course, talk to your doctor if you're
Yeah.
gonna take it, because if you're already on hypertensive
Mm-hmm.
medication, then that can
It'll
it
interfere
can
with it.
interfere with it. And also, sometimes I know, as we spoke about comorbidities, some persons who are on hypertensive medication are also on blood thinners,
Mm-hmm.
and garlic will thin your blood
Yeah.
as well. So
Yeah.
make sure that if you're going to try anything that we mentioned, that you talk to your healthcare provider. All
Mm-hmm.
right.
Yeah.
Now, if we tell you to try ripe banana, I don't think you need to talk to your healthcare provider about eating a ripe banana, right? Flaxseed. No, talk about flaxseed. Tell us something about
Well,
flaxseed.
flaxseed is good because it's anti-inflammatory, right? And when we have a lot of inflammation in our body, that can also increase our blood pressure. And for those who may have low estrogen, flaxseed is
Mhm.
also a phytoestrogen, so it can help the body, with that aspect of,
As well.
the estrogen and the cardiovascular disease relationship.
Right.
There's also so if you're gonna do flax seeds, you want to have them freshly ground, and you want to have 2 tablespoons of the flax seeds. If you grind more than you need, you can store it in the freezer until the next day.
Right. Put it
Yeah.
in a glass jar, put it in
Mm-hmm.
the freezer.
Yeah.
I know that we can get the bags to buy with where it's already grounded, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to buy
Yeah.
that one. You want to buy the whole grain, and then you
The
grind it,
seed.
because it loses. What does it lose?
Well, I know when it's
It
Yeah,
oxidizes. It
when it's
oxidizes.
exposed to light or air, it affects the bonds that are in the flaxseed itself, and it affects its anti-inflammatory properties. So you want to grind it yourself and eat it right away.
So buy yourself a very small grinder.
Mm-hmm.
Some people call it a coffee grinder, but it's small, and you just put whatever you need in it, and you
Yeah.
do that for the day. And as Donisha said, if you've done too much, then you just put the rest in a glass
Mm-hmm.
container right in the freezer right
Yeah.
away.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
There's also pumpkin seeds, and that one is good because it's high in magnesium.
Mm-hmm.
And we mentioned the effects of magnesium earlier. Especially if someone has kidney issues, you can consider something like corn silk, which is really good for, flushing things out of the kidneys.
And the corn silk is the do you know that thing at the top of the
Mm-mm.
corn, the hair, what we call the corn, the hair of the corn?
Yeah,
That's what
the
the
corn silk
corn silk.
is.
So if you have lots of corn that you've planted yourself,
Mm-hmm.
because remember, most of the corn is
GMO.
modified, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you have corn that you've planted yourself, then you can use that little hairy thing at the top. You can just store it. Again, you can store it in your refrigerator or your freezer and use it when you need it to make
Yeah.
some tea.
Mm-hmm. There's also hibiscus tea that can be used. It's really good for blood pressure. There's also hawthorn and hawthorn berries that are good for blood pressure. And blackstrap molasses can give your body a lot of the minerals that you need, but this is not if you are diabetic. If you're diabetic, you want to stay
Mhm.
away from the molasses.
Yes, and soursop leaves as
Mm-hmm.
well. That will work as well.
Yeah.
Soursop leaves, you can use it to make a tea. Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're making a tea, then you want to, if you're using the flowers, and that's very soft,
Yeah.
then you just want to steep that.
Mm-hmm.
You put them in the cup and you pour the hot water on it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're using the roots,
Yeah.
then you want to boil it, right? If you're
Mm-hmm.
using the roots of it, and sometimes boil it for like 15 minutes, and then allow it to sit for a couple hours,
Yeah.
then all the properties that are in the root would then come out in the water. Then you can
Mm-hmm.
strain it and drink it. All right.
Yeah. Okay. Any?
There's a question here. Is there any is there a danger of taking too much magnesium?
Um.
So, and it's the same person,
Should we
should we
take
take
magnesium
magnesium
supplements
supplements?
alone or with calcium at bedtime or during the day? Yeah, so this type of question, this is where you need to speak to your healthcare provider. This is what we've been saying the whole time, right? So, like I mentioned, magnesium is important for over 600 reactions in the body, right? And a lot of the times a majority of us are magnesium deficient, right? So I've never heard of anyone overdosing on magnesium, but if you can overdose on water, I wouldn't be surprised if you can overdose on magnesium. Magnesium has so many different uses, right? You can take it before bed. You can take it to relax your muscles. It's a good muscle relaxant. So Epsom salt has magnesium in it. So, people will take their Epsom salt baths to
Hmm.
relax them
Or soak their feet
or
in
soak
Epsom
their feet
salt.
in Epsom salt. It's also good for your brain. So you have different types of magnesium depending on what's bound to it. So like you might have heard of magnesium citrate or
This lesson.
bisglycinate or threonate. So these are the types of conversations you want to have with your healthcare provider. So someone asked, should magnesium be taken alone or with calcium? Now, that would depend on your diet, right? Are you eating a lot of foods that are already high in magnesium? Are you eating a lot of foods that are high in calcium? Because if you are, then you wouldn't need to supplement, right? So yes, you can take magnesium at bedtime to help relax you and it can help with sleep, but you can also take it in the daytime. So it depends on the purpose of the magnesium and it also depends on what your diet is like to determine, do I need magnesium alone? Do I need magnesium with calcium? And there are two others that are included in that conversation. There's also vitamin D and vitamin K. So this is the type of conversation you want to have with your healthcare provider. So I can't just say, yes or no, everybody take it, everybody don't take it. It depends on you and your personal situation.
And with the magnesium, like with the Epsom salt, soaking in the Epsom
Mm-hmm.
salt, or even the magnesium oil that we spray on,
Yeah.
then it does not have to be processed by the body. It doesn't
By the
by the
liver.
liver.
Yeah.
So when you spray it on, like in the case of the oil, then you don't have to worry.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're interested, when you're making the oil, you can buy from the health food store
Yeah.
magnesium
Flake.
flakes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's magnesium flakes that you would purchase. And once you have the flakes, then you will put 1 part magnesium flakes to 1 part um, distilled water or purified water.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean by 1 part, if you use half a cup of flakes, you use half a cup of water.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you use quarter cup of flakes, quarter cup
Yeah.
of water.
Yeah.
And then the water, you put it on the stove, you heat the water up, you pour the flakes in it, you stir it, it dissolves,
Mm-hmm.
and that's your magnesium oil.
Yeah.
Then you can put it in a bottle, a spray bottle
Mm-hmm.
to use. And
Yeah.
that's what we've been using as our magnesium oil.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Another thing, if persons are hypertensive, that they can try is hydrotherapy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this will take some more time. One evening, we will probably do a class just on hydrotherapy alone, but you can put either your hands in the hot water or your feet. So another time, we will go more
Mm-hmm.
into that. And we want to ask, are there any questions?
Yeah, we are
Any other
running out of time,
questions?
so we want to know, are there any quick questions that we can answer before we start closing off here?
All right. Okay, if there is, then while we're talking, you can put
Mm-hmm.
the question in the chat, or you can open your microphone and talk. So we want to let you know again that the website is up. It's
Mm-hmm.
drdnaturalhealth.com.
Yeah.
And also that we do offer health consultations. So if
Mm-hmm.
you are in need of one, then you can contact us.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that we are doing starting the 11th of April, you may want to book this date. You want to put it on your calendar. We have a training that's coming up, and we're calling it a boot camp, a diabetes boot camp. This is April 11th to 20th, and it will be 7 sessions,
Mm-hmm.
and it will be done over Zoom. There is a cost. Maybe if Danisha can do a screen share,
I'll just
then
put the website in the chat,
okay, all right.
the
And
link, I mean.
and what we want to do in this boot camp is that we want to teach persons how they can do the things that we're talking about, how they can do it practically, and how you can overcome your lifestyle condition, whatever that lifestyle condition is. In this case, we're looking at diabetes. Um, we want to give you the tools. We want to help you, or to hold your hands, to walk you through,
Mm-hmm.
and to show you that it is possible. So we have the 11th to the 20th, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. We will have the sessions. We ask that you
Mm-hmm.
tell your friends and your relatives, your loved ones, if they're diabetic, or if you know they're pre-diabetic, or if it's in the family and they're afraid that they will get it and they don't want to get it, then please encourage them to join the class, and we will be happy to walk them through. In addition to that, we will give a registration package, and also we will give you all the information that we use during the class, during the sessions as well. So you can have them and you can go back and you can look at them, and you can reread them, and you will know exactly what to do. We'll give you some schedules that you can use as well. There is a registration fee, so we ask that you register. It's $75, and we will ask that you go to the website under the training tab and register for this upcoming training. And in addition to that, are there any other questions? No? Okay. So then, as usual, we want to remind you where to find the videos. They're on YouTube, and they're
Mm-hmm.
also on Facebook at DRD Natural Health. And we thank you so much for joining us again this week.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to remind you that we start on time. So at 7 o'clock every week, we're
Yeah.
starting at 7. So if you join at 7:10,
Mm-hmm.
you would have missed some of the information
Yeah.
as a matter of fact, if you join at 7:01, you would have missed 1 minute of information. All right. Okay. So as usual, I'm Rosetta,
I'm Donisha.
and we're encouraging you to start
Start your
your
journey
journey
towards
towards
better
better
health
health today.
today. Yeah.
God bless you. Let us pray. Father, we thank you so much for your blessings, and we thank you, Lord, that we were concerned about the electricity going out with the thunderstorm, but praise your name, everything stayed up. and we are happy for that. Thank you for the information, and we pray that we will use this information so that we can have better health. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for joining us again this evening.